Welcome to Blockchain Security Series, the podcast where the future of Web3 security unfolds. Presented by pablito.eth.
Hello and welcome. I am Pablo Sabbatella, your guide through the intricate and evolving world of blockchain security. Each episode we dive deep into the heart of Web3, bringing you face-to-face with the pioneers and key players shaping the blockchain security ecosystem. Presented by Blockfence. Hello everyone, welcome to the 8th episode of the Blockchain Security Series. Today we have Rosco, founder of Revoke.cash. Hi Rosco, how are you?
Hey Pablo, thanks for the invite. I'm doing great. How are you?
Excellent. I'm here in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Today is Labor's Day. I shouldn't be working, but this is not work for me. This is fun. So where are you now?
So I've been traveling the past months for a bit. I'm in Turkey right now, but usually I'm based out of Amsterdam, the Netherlands.
Interesting. I love Amsterdam. I've been there like 2 or 3 times. So we have lots of stuff to talk about. But to start, I would like to know a bit about your story, right? How you got interested with computers, programming, then how you got into crypto and then security. So would you like to start a bit talking about that?
Yeah, sounds good. I guess I got into computers and like programming and stuff like in high school. Wasn't really sure what to do with that, but then I just decided to go study computer science, also in Amsterdam. And I guess while studying, I was just kind of trying to pick up like some small projects here and there, like some side projects, working on kind of my own things. And then in 2017, there was a big crypto bull market, so I kind of got introduced to the idea of Ethereum and like smart contracts, and sort of this idea of building applications on top of crypto, like being able to just code your smart contracts. That like as sort of a software engineer, that was super interesting to me. So while I was studying, I started doing the Consensus Academy, actually, which was like a online boot camp to sort of get into crypto like smart contract programming. And then after that, I started doing like hackathons, going to like some sort of crypto events, and that's kind of how I rolled into like working with crypto. So when I was doing my master's in 2019, I met some people from Bitcoin.com at a hackathon, and that's kind of how I got started with working in crypto. So I did my master's thesis with them in Tokyo. And so if you don't know Bitcoin.com, it's a Roger Ver's company, and they mostly work with like Bitcoin Cash, but nowadays also do stuff with Ethereum, I believe, and like other cryptos as well. And so what I built for my master's thesis was this like programming language called Cashscript, which is like a high level language for Bitcoin Cash. That was kind of like inspired by what I had seen in Ethereum, and sort of the Ethereum developer ecosystem especially. And so that was my my master's thesis, and I kind of kept working on that for a while longer, and also did like a bunch of projects on the side. So this was also around the same time that I was building some like Truffle plugin integrations, and not long after that, I also started the first version of Revoke.cash as like a side project. So I was doing a bunch of different things. And then over the years that followed, I did some like contracting work for some different crypto companies. And also, like I said, doing the sort of the side projects, which Revoke.cash was at the time, like a side project, and then the truffle stuff and some other projects. Until in the end of 2021, the beginning of 2022, I decided to start something for myself together with a friend, and that was Chaingrep, which is basically we were trying to build a sort of a startup that was like providing like better human understandable insights into transactions, because as you know, with like Ethereum transactions, it's usually just a bunch of like hex characters, so it can be super hard for people to understand what they're signing or what they've done in their past transactions or anything like that. So that was kind of the issue that we were trying to tackle there with Chaingrep. But yeah, in the end, it turned out to be like kind of hard to figure out like what to do there. So after about like half a year, a bit longer, my co-founder and I decided to split up.
You have you participated in Y Combinator, right, for the project?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
And I mean, I see some relation with this thing of protecting users, because basically when you sign, you have no idea of what you're signing with most of wallets. So part of your learning there, I think that, well, now you'll tell us, but was used to create Revoke.cash for some ideas.
Yeah, so yeah, totally on point there. So my co-founder and I for Chaingrep, we split up in I think July of 2022, and yeah, like you said, we had been working on some of these like ideas of like human readable transactions, kind of like helping people understand what they're signing, those kind of things. And so after like sort of splitting up with my co-founder and quitting that startup, I was kind of in this position where I'm like, okay, well, what's next? And at that time, like Revoke was still just a side project, but it was becoming bigger and bigger, because crypto is getting bigger and a lot of more people are getting scammed. So I figured there was like a real need for that kind of security tooling, and it would be a shame not to sort of go full time on that project. And so that's like, yeah, I guess getting close to 2 years ago now that I've been working on Revoke full time. And what's I think one of the big things also is like, I think I launched the Revoke.cash browser extension. It was like a couple of weeks after sort of leaving the startup. So everything that we were trying to do with Chaingrep was still sort of fresh on my mind. And I tried to sort of create the simplest version of that with the Revoke browser extension, just kind of like help people at least avoid the most like obvious scams, or like the most harmful ones. So the Revoke browser extension gives you warnings whenever you're about to like give a token approval or like list NFTs for sale. And these kind of things are sort of the most common ways that scammers try to steal your money. And so I think if I hadn't done like the whole Chaingrep process, the whole startup, then probably that extension wouldn't have like happened either. So I think it's a cool process how everything sort of worked out.
Yeah, it's like you saw the Steve Jobs commencement speech at Stanford, where he says that you connect the dots backwards. If you, so I see the same thing here. Very interesting.
Absolutely.
So about Revoke.cash, how did you get the idea, or when was it that you said, "Hey, this is an issue in the industry. We have to do something about this." When you created it, did EtherScan token approval checker already started, but perhaps wasn't used enough? In fact, something I say is that sometimes is that EtherScan has so many tools that are great, but most people don't even know they exist. In fact, every week I discover something new that they said, "Oh, this is very good," but nobody knows it exists. So how did you start with the idea?
Yeah, so it started in 2019. So just after I graduated, after I finished my master's. And like I said, I was doing a bunch of different side projects, also playing around a lot with like different crypto projects, crypto apps, trying to do like some early token stuff. And one of the things that sort of kept coming back is that whenever you use any of these on-chain apps, like Uniswap existed back then, early versions, and like there were like a few other DeFi apps, but always you had to give them access to your tokens. So you go to this app, you want to swap, I don't know, like some DAI for ETH, and you have to give Uniswap access to your DAI, or if you want to deposit tokens, things like that. And that didn't really seem to be a good way to get rid of that access afterwards. And this was actually, at this point, EtherScan's tool didn't exist yet. I think they released their token approvals tool like a year later, around the end of 2020. As far as I know, Revoke is at least one of the earliest sort of tools to actually offer that kind of functionality at all. And initially, it was built just in a few days. So I chatted about sort of this issue that I was like thinking about with also with Paul Berg from Sablier, the money streaming service at Devcon in Osaka. I'm kind of like going back and forth about it. I was like, okay, well, we kind of need something for this. And so in like the week after Devcon, I just kind of like built it in a few days, and it was just like this list of token names and then your approval right next to it, and just a button to revoke. And it would just like auto connect when you land on the page, and then just display that. So it was really the most basic thing that you could build in a few days, kind of like a hackathon project, really. And then over the time that evolved into sort of something bigger.
How much time did it take you to create that MVP? That first simple version that worked. Perhaps it was not so nice, but it worked.
Yeah, it took probably like 3 days, I think, like just 3 days of like probably I was working about it quite a few hours every day, so it was like three full days, let's say. So it took some time, but yeah, I just tried to launch the minimum thing that I could use myself, really, to just look at my own token approvals.
And you created everything yourself, like the backend, the front end, everything. You like it was a solopreneur, let's say, project.
Yeah, absolutely. So I created myself, and like I used like some APIs and stuff, like use some services that other people had built, like to get like token balances and stuff. Because for like a first project, like if there are other people that are also like offering something like as an API, as a service, I think it makes sense to just kind of at least use something like that for the MVP. Yeah, and so that it just stayed a solo project for the longest time. Like even after I went full time on it in 2022, it was like every now and then I had like some contracting work done. But now, since last December, I have one other person working on the company with me. So it's no longer a fully solopreneur experience. He's working part-time, so we're kind of like 1.5 person working on the app right now. So kind of trying to sort of slowly expand where it's possible. Yeah.
Very nice. And so, how were you launched, like you had the first MVP in a couple of days, and then how was the growth in terms of features? What did you launch first? What worked? What didn't work? Did you have feedback from users or not so much? Because something that we have in crypto sometimes is that because of we want to offer products that offer privacy to the users. Sometimes you don't have an idea of who's your user. You don't have an email. You don't know where they're from. You don't have anything. So how did you work with that?
Yeah, that's totally true. It is pretty sort of hard to kind of figure out what is working and what's not. So it's for a long time, like I didn't really do that much on it. So sort of I created it in 2019 in October, and then in like a few months that followed, I try to polish it a bit more, where you can you actually have to click a connect wallet button first instead of getting just a MetaMask pop up in your face, and get some like token logos and things like that. Some like a little bit better UI and things like that. But I think for probably like until 2021, that was like mostly it's just like kind of small changes. But I think also because crypto was very small still. So it was created in 2029, and then throughout 2020, crypto started picking up with like DeFi summer and those kind of things. But then in 2021, like the bull market kicked off, right? So like there was a lot of new people in crypto, a lot of new apps, new users with NFTs like taking off a lot as well. So so I think then it also became like more important to sort of add more features.
And there was that. When did you launch, for example, the browser extension?
That was in 2022. So it was kind of like during the bear market again. So I think during the whole NFT bull market in 2021, I think it would have been really nice to have that kind of browser extension at that point, because a lot of people were like aping into crazy things and losing money to scams. But I think I think like as a reaction to that, also like there's now quite a few sort of browser extensions that do things like that. So it's like the Revoke extension, Wallet Guard, Pocket Universe. So a bunch of these extensions are now like trying to help with that issue.
Yeah, what I always think about all these extensions, that I think that they're very good, is that perhaps the user that knows that needs to install that kind of extension is already the user that takes care about security, right? But then I think that it's very difficult to make a normal user like install an extension, right? And also the thing that we're gonna then talk a bit more about this, but every time you install an extension, you're like installing. Like when I talk about security, I always say install as less extensions as you can. So you're installing more extensions for security, and that adds perhaps some risk also, because perhaps someone is impersonating you. We will talk about that, impersonating Revoke.cash. So it's it's something. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think definitely it's a good advice to not like have too many extensions. There's definitely some risk with extensions, especially since you have to give quite some like sensitive access for them. Like there's the biggest one is the read and write data on all websites. So if you, for most of these extensions, you have to give that permission, which basically means that if this extension is like a scam, or if they have like a malicious extension, then they can change every website that you visit. So they can maybe change it so that if you go to the real Uniswap website and you click swap, that actually you send all your money to a scammer. So there's definitely a real risk in installing too many or like shady extensions. So I think it's a good advice to not install too much. And I think ideally at some point in the future, like the wallets themselves will sort of have better integration of these kind of warnings and these kinds of sort of I don't know anti-scam functionality. And I think wallets are working on that. MetaMask has been adding some stuff for that. I know Rabby has a lot of sort of interesting warnings going on. I think Phantom's also integrating with some services like that tell you like the simulation of what you're doing. So I think ideally, that's sort of where we're going. Where it's nice for me to have people use the Revoke extension, but it would be even nicer if it's not necessary to use it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you also have the risk not only of malicious browser extensions, but of supply chain attacks, right? As we saw some weeks ago with the XC backdoor for Linux distributions. That was pretty scary. The same could happen to an extension, right? So yeah, that's something to think about. So Revoke.cash is open source, right?
Yeah.
Why did you decide to make it open source, and how is that connected also with getting revenue, right? And to say, okay, I want to be 100% dedicated to this. We always, as entrepreneurs, we know that we have like the we have to make a balance right there of I want to be 100% dedicated to this, but perhaps I know that if I would be working for this company, I would be making all this money, but I want to do this, right? And this is good for the community. But sometimes we also know that making users pay for security products, it's not easy, right?
Yeah,
so
totally.
Tell me about this.
Yeah. So actually, when I was working as like on my student job, back in like the first years of my studying, I worked for a company that was like a very big sort of open source proponent. So like a lot of the things that we built at that company were open source, and we like contributed to a bunch of open source tooling at the company. So that's kind of like where I got my introduction to open source and sort of the good that it can bring. And so I kind of applied that to a lot of my side projects, where my idea was always like, if I don't really have a good reason to like close source it, I will open source everything I build. And initially with Revoke.cash, I had no intention of making it into a business. It was just a tool that I wanted for myself, and I could imagine other people needing to use as well. So I really had no reason to not make it open source. And I think looking back, that's still the right decision. I think it's pretty important for these kinds of tools to be available open source, so that like they will sort of like stay accessible even if I decide to stop building stuff. People can always still use the tools. Whereas with we've also seen like a lot of tools sort of go out of business over the years, and then you just can't use them anymore. With a lot of like different crypto and non-crypto apps. I think that part is kind of what I think is the most important of like having Revoke be open source.
And being open source, did you get many inputs from the community of, for example, I found this bug, or you should check this, or you could, or like someone saying, okay, I made this feature and then you liked it and you add it, or wasn't it? I mean, how much input did you have? Because we also see what happened with XC, with the XC backdoor, that there are many libraries and open source projects that they are open source, but perhaps they have only one contributor, right? And that's also something pretty scary in my opinion.
Yeah, I think sort of the reality for a lot of open source projects is that you don't get as much input as you would want, including Revoke. So yeah, like the ideal of open source is that anyone can contribute, and if you run into any issues when using the product, you can solve it yourself. But I think the reality is that doesn't happen often. So definitely in the first couple of years, there wasn't a whole lot of input, and I think also that's because Revoke is a consumer-facing tool. So I think like the sort of open source ideal is more realistic for more like developer-focused tooling. So developers, if they run into an issue with some library they're using, they're more likely to contribute and fix the bug themselves. But a user that runs into something on your website is less likely to be a developer and have the skills and then also like implement something. But recently we're trying to sort of attract more people to like make small contributions. So I'm trying to create a lot of like smaller issues on GitHub. So like some of these very like small issues that someone can do within a day or like less than that. So someone that hasn't worked on Revoke before can sort of get into it. It has like the description of what needs to be done. And I think in the past, I would like for these kind of small issues, I would always try to just do them as fast as possible. And like, I want to fix this. I want to do that. I'll do it myself in a day. But then I think for those small issues, it's much more valuable if you get someone else to sort of also invest their time into that and invest their energy, and hopefully that can lead to those people sort of like feeling more ownership over it, contributing more. So yeah, like definitely recently I'm just trying to attract more people. So if anyone's watching this and they're thinking I can help out with that, yeah, definitely check out the open issues on the Revoke GitHub.
Yes, please. Okay, great. Then let's go a bit back to the basics of what Revoke.cash is doing and what you're like trying to fix. So, what is an ERC20 allowance? How do they work? And also a question: unlimited allowances, right? Is that like I think that sometimes it's an issue from front end, right? If I'm going to do a swap and I'm gonna swap like 20 DAI and it asks me for unlimited allowance, why are we making that, right? And so let's go into that.
Yep. So these allowances or token approvals are essentially a way to make your tokens interact with smart contracts. Because at the protocol level of Ethereum, like you can send ETH and call like a smart contract in the same sort of interaction, but tokens are a smart contract themselves. So you usually can't send tokens to a smart contract and then also like interact with it through like a function. So it's just technically impossible. Like without having these token approvals, it's technically impossible to just swap tokens on Uniswap even. So that's why, like, every time you go to Uniswap or you interact with some dApp, you have to give these token approvals. And yeah, so that's I guess the way it works there. There are other sort of solutions to the same problem, but at this point, this solution has been sort of the standard for the past almost 10 years. So that's kind of what we're gonna stick with.
And regarding this thing of unlimited allowances, are you seeing like more protocols like fixing these kind of things and not asking for something unlimited when they don't need it? And mostly when users don't even understand like what they are signing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think there's definitely reasons to sort of say, yeah, I mean, unlimited approvals are sort of a front end bug, but at the same time, it's usually like with a lot of things, it's a trade off between security and convenience, and a lot of people would also not want to have like these small approvals because then they have to give a new approval every time they swap tokens. So let's say if you're swapping the same token on Uniswap every day or very, very frequently, then a lot of people would prefer to say, okay, hey, Uniswap, you can have access to all of my DAI, and then I don't need to send extra transactions every time. So that's kind of the idea behind those unlimited token approvals. But then, as you said very correctly, like that also means that you're exposing yourself to more risk than if you would just give this like 20 DAI approval. But also what I think is important to note here is that that's the way it is for ERC20 tokens. But if we look at NFTs, the way token approvals work for NFTs, it's actually not feasible at all to give limited approvals. So that's I feel that is like an oversight on the side of the token design, because they could have I feel like they could have designed NFT like ERC 721 standards in a way that would also allow regular usage of like single NFT approvals. And so what that means is that if you have like 5 Bored Apes and you want to sell one of them, you still just have to give OpenSea access to all 5. And now that NFTs are often worth a lot of money, that's just not something you want to do. So then you get all of these other kind of solutions where it's now like recommended that if you have like let's say if you have 5 Bored Apes, you keep them on one wallet, and then if you want to sell one of them, you first send that to another wallet and then list it from there, which is, yeah, I mean, it's super convoluted, but that is the most secure way to do it. And I would recommend that if you have like those kind of high value NFTs, that you do it that way. But so I would say that is more of like a bug, in my opinion, than the way sort of unlimited ERC20 approvals work.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I like that tip of sending the token to another wallet. So, based on your experience and what you've been analyzing, what do you think is the source of most of the hacks that are related to allowances and permits, like users signing malicious transactions because of a phishing, or a protocol that gets hacked and everyone gets wrecked?
Right. Yeah, these are definitely both very big issues. And I think like the biggest difference is that with scammers and like phishing, the issue is that there's a lot of it happening, and like most of the individual incidents are small-ish. So there's like hundreds of people losing small amounts, relatively small. There's still people that lose a lot, of course, but relatively small amounts. And then every now and then there's a big protocol hack where a lot of people lose a lot of money, where there's like a total of like millions or hundreds of millions stolen at once. So I think they're very different things. And I'm sure you could there's probably like stats that will say like specifically the money, like the monetary amounts of how much either of those do. But I think for the regular user, I think like phishing and scams is something that is like more likely to happen than getting like losing money in like a protocol hack. And I also think that losing money in a protocol hack is usually something that you can sort of protect yourself against better, or at least you have more time to protect yourself against it, because it just happens one time. And for example, with certain protocol hacks, like we've seen some big ones where some smart contract from like 3 years ago was exploited and people lost millions. But in those cases, I feel like those cases are entirely avoidable, because those are like smart contracts that have been discontinued for years already, and people still have like open token approvals or deposited funds in those smart contracts. Yeah, like that's something that you could have sort of anticipated. Whereas with scams and phishing, it's a lot harder to protect yourself as like a regular user, because of the things that we talked about earlier, that it's so hard for regular users to sort of understand what they're signing. And of course, people can protect themselves by installing these kind of extensions like the Revoke.cash extension or Wallet Guard or those kind of things. But even then, scammers are always trying to like obfuscate everything they're doing to like make it seem like you're just signing an ordinary transaction or like doing something legitimate, and then they drain your money. So it's really hard to not get scammed, I feel like, still. And I think that's the bigger problem that we're facing, I think.
Yeah, and regarding what you said about old contracts, for example, yesterday, Yield protocol was hacked for 180K, and Yield protocol doesn't have any more support since February, right? But there's still money there. But perhaps it's from a user that lost its wallet, and that's it, or perhaps it was like from legit users. But well, you never know. So something interesting that I have also seen is that the process of exploiting a contract that has an issue regarding allowances, right? It usually isn't something where you have like an atomic transaction where everyone got wrecked in one transaction and that's it. But that you see that you have an attacker, an original attacker, the first one, that starts like draining tokens from different users. And then you have like copycat black hats that start doing the same. Do you want to talk a bit about this process and why is it's not so fast? And sometimes I have even seen that people getting drained like 1 week after a protocol has been originally hacked in that way, because I don't know, some token. I mean, the attacker has to check for each token the allowances that they have. That's something that requires resources, and perhaps they go and they do it for USDT, DAI, or whatever, but then they left some things. What have you seen about this process, or have you seen anything interesting?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, yeah, it definitely depends on the case. I've seen some hacks where, you know, there's just one hacker that drains everything in one transaction. But like you said, it's also very often the case that it's sort of a few tokens here, a few tokens there, and especially when there are token approvals involved. because it is like it takes time to sort of figure out who has token approvals and to whom. Like that's not just something you can ask of the smart contract. Like you can't just say list all token approvals. So like you said, if a lot of times hackers will just target the most valuable assets first. They're like, oh, okay, I found this exploit. Let me drain like all of the USDT and USDC or like ETH, things like that, and then later other hackers, like once the hack is public, it's usually very easy for other hackers to join in because they see what's happening and they can replicate that. They see, oh, this is how it's being exploited. I can do the exact same thing, but maybe for a different token that the initial hacker wasn't looking at, for example. And then also sorry, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, what were we talking about?
No, we were talking about how an attacker exploits these allowance things, why it takes time, and this whole process. Something interesting. There you are.
Yeah, so there we are. So actually, like, in a lot of cases, there's just like you have this concept of like automated front running bots that like just automatically look at all the transactions that are coming in, see is this transaction making money, and if so, I can do the same thing. And these are not even necessarily scammers. These are just people that try to find profitable transactions. And so a lot of times when like a hack is happening, these bots will automatically do the same thing and sort of try to compete with the hackers to get the same money out of the contract. And that's a good thing, because the people that run these bots are often not actually scammers or hackers. So when they figure out what happens, those are usually the people that give back the money. So I think that is that's a very interesting part of what that sort of the hacking landscape looks like nowadays. But yeah, I think that's and then one other thing, because you mentioned that sometimes like maybe a week later people still lose money to a hack, and one of the reasons is, like you mentioned, maybe the hacker just didn't see all tokens. Like maybe there's some small token that does have some value but nobody knows about, so the hacker didn't think about it. But also what we see a lot is that people just don't revoke the token approvals. So you lose, let's say, 10K USDC in these kind of hacks, and then you send another 10K into the wallet like a week later or something. Then that's going to get stolen again. So I think that's also a reason that like even like months after a hack like that happens, there's going to be people that haven't revoked their token approvals yet, and that are just going to keep getting drained whenever they're sending new money into the wallet.
Yeah, and then there's a very important, role from the community in alerting about this, right? Like, this protocol has been hacked, please everyone revoke, right?
Yeah.
But there, we also have another issue we are going to start talking now, right? Like scammers impersonating Revoke.cash and saying, okay, hey, Uniswap, like what happened to Hayden Adams, right? His Twitter got hacked because of StreamSwap. I remember that it was like 3 days after EthCC in Paris. And he said, okay, Uniswap has been hacked. Everyone please revoke. They put a link that was not really revoke.cash, but a phishing attack. And there, like, you have this thing of when they are trying to scam you, Like they tell you, okay, you have to do this fast. Like you have to do it right now, right? Don't think, just go and click. So, I mean, I think that Revoke.cash must be one of the most, let's say, impersonated or attack platforms, like with phishing attacks. What do you think about this? And what's your thinking about this?
Yeah, I definitely also think that Revoke is one of the most impersonated platforms, especially because of what you said, that usually when there is like an actual hack, people want to get to Revoke as fast as possible. And like you said, oh, just click, don't read. So you're in like this panic mode already, and then if you're in that panic mode, it's very easy to just click, don't read, and get your money stolen because it's on a fake website. Because I think like every day there's new fake Revoke websites popping up. And then you have these sort of like malicious Google ads, but also on Twitter there's a lot of like ads that have like fake websites. Yeah, but also a lot of times there's like these bots that are just sort of like spamming as if there was like a big hack. Every now and then there's like people saying, oh, the Uniswap got hacked, revoke now, and then you have like 200 different accounts like sharing fake links to kind of like create that panic.
Yeah, and I also think that there's a pretty big responsibility from, for example, from Google or from Twitter, now called X. I mean, bots in Twitter have been for the last 2 weeks. Personally, like I have a pretty big Twitter account, like 70K followers, and nowadays 95% of my notifications are bots. Like you see that they create new accounts. They do like retweet of tweets from everyone. I sometimes detect them because they are accounts that they say that they talk in English, but they do retweets from tweets I have in Spanish. So that's an easy way to detect them. Then you go to the account, you see that they are not following anyone that you're following, and that the name is something, but the username is something very different. But I mean, it's unstoppable. I mean, Twitter is clearly, I think that they are not doing anything or anything that it's useful. And also we are seeing with Google Ads, like I sent you today, that I searched at revoke.cash first link, that there they also have an issue because the first link is called revoke.cash official, and it shows that the URL is revoke.cash, right? That's a pretty big problem from Google, but I think that if these companies don't get sued or something, they're not going to change. They are making money with this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what you just said is also one of the biggest issues, that also on Twitter you see this a lot, or on X, that it just everything looks like it's the right link because because the scammers are able to sort of like fake that as well, fake like the Twitter preview thing. So, and then it just links to a completely different website. So I think that is at least something that they could improve on. Like they can make it a lot harder for these scammers to like show fake previews. Because now every time I see someone sharing, wait 1 second. Yeah. Okay, no worries. Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah. So now every time.
Yeah,
we were talking about that. So I was just saying that if you have, like if you have these Twitter preview cards that show the real name, that actually show revoke.cash, then it's very reasonable that you believe that card, right? Like it makes sense. Like even whenever I like see people sharing Revoke.cash on Twitter, I usually like give them a like or whatever. But now I also have to just click the link every time to make sure that that's actually someone sharing the Revoke.cash link and it's not some scammer. So like even for me, it's I can't see like the real link from the fake one until you click on it. So it's I think that's one of the biggest problems about this sort of impersonation thing.
And regarding the different kind of attacks, right? Have you seen like a trend in phishing scams using gasless transactions? I mean, instead of making the user sign a transaction where they spend gas, there's like an idea in the ecosystem that if I sign a transaction, if it's an off-chain transaction, like when you sign to log in into any platform, that I think that's not like a good idea for platforms to do, but we do it, for example, for Lenser, that there's an idea of if I'm not spending gas, this is not dangerous, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are some cases where you sign an off-chain transaction and you are given allowance. So can you talk a bit about this? Have you seen a trend? Is it being used a lot or not?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an upwards trend where a lot more people are using, a lot more scammers are using that technique compared to like the on-chain scams. And I think it's because there's sort of this fight going on between like the wallets and the security extensions and then the scammers on the other side. And like maybe 1 year or 2 years ago, scammers could just get away with doing the on-chain stuff, like tricking someone into giving you a token approval to the scammer, or just tricking them into sending like ETH directly to the scammer. Those kinds of things. Those were like easier to do, but I think now there's more awareness and more like tooling from the wallets and the security sort of extensions that fewer people are getting tricked by that. So I think there's a pretty clear trend that the scammers are doing like more niche things now. So first it was the permit signatures, which is basically giving a token approval through like just an off-chain signature. And also a big one that in my opinion is one of the scariest ones is the like the NFT listing signature. So whenever you go on OpenSea and you want to list your Bored Ape or whatever, you have to sign an off-chain message to basically tell OpenSea, hey, you can sell this Bored Ape for me for 20 ETH, and then OpenSea will try to find a buyer for you, right? But you can give that exact same signature to a scammer, and you can say, oh, please sell this Bored Ape for me for 0 ETH or 0.0001 ETH. And that's basically the same as just directly sending the Bored Ape to the scammer, except in this case, they can use one single signature to steal all the assets that you have, like token approvals to OpenSea or to Blur or to like other NFT marketplaces. So if you have an approval to OpenSea for your Bored Apes and your Pudgy Penguins and also your wrapped Ether because you're like bidding on other NFTs, then just one signature will mean like you lose all of that. You lose all your Bored Apes, all your Pudgy Penguins, all your wrapped ETH, everything you have approved with just a single signature. So I think that is by far the scariest thing that you can do on a scam website.
And for example, if you gave this off-chain approval, right? Is there a way? Which is the way to revoke an off-chain approval? Is it possible? How do you do it? Or you have to move your assets to another wallet? What do you do?
So this is like a difficult question because there's a lot of different like off-chain signatures that you can sign. Like we said, you have the approvals, like the permit signatures. You have the NFT listings. But then you also mentioned, there's just some signatures that are only used for logging in. Like those aren't an issue, but just to show there's a lot of different kinds of signatures that you can sign. And some of them can be like revoked or canceled in some way, but it's different for every type of signature. And so, for example, for OpenSea and for Blur, there's a way to sort of cancel all the off-chain signatures that you've signed up until now. So you can call this function, and basically that tells OpenSea, okay, everything I signed before now is invalid, doesn't exist anymore. But that also includes your actual listings. But sometimes, like if you went to a phishing website and you signed this thing, then maybe if you're fast enough, you can still like cancel that. And so on Revoke.cash, we have the signatures tab, which gives you the sort of the functionality to do that. So it shows you like, you can cancel all your OpenSea signatures, for example. And the same thing applies to these permit signatures as well. So if you give a token approval with that kind of permit signature, it's also possible to do a similar thing and like cancel that signature before the scammer uses it. But in both of those cases, you have to be super fast, right? That's like one of the few cases where you actually really do need to be fast. And in almost all of the cases, the scammer will win. Like as soon as you have signed that, it's very unlikely that you're fast enough. But and you kind of have to have the presence of mind, right? You have to know immediately, I signed something bad. I need to go to Revoke.cash and cancel these things. And you have to know exactly what buttons to press, like what to cancel. So that's why usually it's just too late. But then with these permit signatures, once they are activated by the scammer, they turn into regular token approvals, and then they show up in the regular list of token approvals on Revoke.cash. So then you still have to revoke that if you get scammed, for example, in that way. But if you're too late to sort of cancel the signature, then that's not going to help anymore, but you still can revoke the regular approval.
Nice. So you also have a section in Revoke.cash website about approval hacks and exploits, right? I think that's pretty nice. 405 million stolen since 2020. I think it would be nice to have also like, do you have stats of how much money Revoke.cash stopped from being drained in each one of these hacks? Like we say, okay, now Magpie has been hacked. How many people has done this? Do you have some kind of stat around that?
It like that kind of stat is a lot harder, I think, to look at, because it's very hard to say, would this have been stolen if someone didn't revoke something, or what if the scam happened and then someone revoked it like 2 months later or 2 months earlier, right? Like let's say the example we had earlier, where with yield, that got like exploited. I don't think that was an approval based hack, but if it was, if it would have been, then does that mean that everybody that revoked their approvals to yield before that moment was saved? I mean, maybe, yeah, right. So, but it's kind of hard to figure out, but it's definitely something that I do want to figure out. So maybe that could be like a cool like internship maybe for someone watching to like kind of figure that kind of data out. So like there's a bunch of cool things that I would like to know stats about and like display stats about, but it's not entirely clear how to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. So regarding some features, you had a feature that was wallet health, and you decided to remove it. How was that decision to create it and then to remove it? And then, for example, you just launched an integration with ScamSniffer like 1 week ago, I think, right? So I would like to know about both.
Yeah, it makes sense. So initially, I added the wallet health in September, I think, and that was a collaboration with Nefture, which is another security company in the space. And so they were providing like these wallet health scores. And initially, the idea is that users kind of want to know in one look, how am I doing? Like, do I need to do things? Do I not need to do things? So the idea there was that user logs on, they see like either a score of like 80, 90, 100. That's good, right? Okay, so maybe you can chill a bit. But if you see like 20 or 10, something like that, then you know that you need to take action and revoke approvals. But I think the big issue was that it can give you like somewhat of an idea of how you're doing, but not really what to do about it. So yeah, like if you see, okay, well, I have a score of 20 out of 100, that's bad, but what should I do to make it good? And so I think some form of the wallet health will come back in the future, but it will need to come like more from the individual token approvals rather than like a global score. And I think the ScamSniffer integration that you mentioned is also like kind of a first step there. So with the ScamSniffer integration now, if you have if you have like known scammers, if you have token approvals to known scammers, then you know that then you will get like an alert. It will show like a red mark that says, hey, maybe you should revoke this because this is like on ScamSniffer's block list, right? And I think I want to expand that information, that data insights in the coming time, that for more and more of your token approvals, we can give you like some advice, like this is high risk because of X, Y, and Z reasons, or this is maybe a lower risk because of these other reasons, so that people kind of see which of my token approvals are the risky ones or the most risky ones. They all carry some risk, of course. And then maybe once we have that, we can reintroduce the global health score as well, but with like clear advice, like, oh, your global health is maybe 20 out of 100, but if you do this and this and that, then you can make it 100, for example.
Yeah, that seems very, very useful. And in fact, the other thing is that sometimes some users, like we have, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 wallets, right? It would be nice to have some kind of service where you can like add all your wallets or your addresses and get like notifications like, hey, be careful with this. But I think there's pretty interesting. So last thing I want to ask you about, what are your favorite conferences? Are you used to going to conferences? What are your favorite ones? Which ones are you planning to go this year, or you already went?
Yeah. I used to go to conferences and hackathons a lot, mostly like before COVID, I guess, and then during COVID, still to some conferences. But I think nowadays I go to way fewer than I used to go to. But this year I'm definitely going to be at EthCC in Brussels this July. That's always one of my favorites. It's always, from what I've the ones I've been to, the production quality is usually really nice. The vibes are there. Previous editions were in Paris, so that was also nice to visit. I've never been in Brussels, so we're gonna see if it's as fun as Paris. But that's one. I think also Devcon is of course a big one. Is the big one, right? So I've been to the one in Osaka, and then now in Bogota as well 2 years ago. So I'm probably going to be at Devcon this year as well, but that's not entirely sure yet. And I also think one of my still favorite conferences used to be Trufflecon, back before Truffle got discontinued. But I think that was the first conference I went to and also gave like a talk at. Was in Trufflecon in 2019. So it will hold like a special place in my heart, especially now that it's never coming back again. It's something to cherish.
Well, for sure we will see each other, because I will be going to EthCC and to Devcon too. So for sure we'll see in Brussels.
Awesome.
It's a very, 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 very nice city. But I also have this doubt, like if it will have like the same vibe of EthCC, where you have the main event and there all the coffee shops near and everyone gathering there. It's my favorite conference, and Europe in July is great. Summer,
yeah,
right?
It's awesome.
I'm escaping from winter in Argentina and going to European summer. So
Nice.
one last question I would like to ask you, like when you started like building Revoke.cash, like as we said, Revoke.cash is being like impersonating and the target of phishing attacks. But have you seen like do you think that you as being the founder, you also become like some kind of target, or not? Because one would say, okay, like Rosco, he's dedicated to security. He must have like a very good OpSec. Have you seen something related to that? Did you change anything in your work habits or practices? What do you think about that regarding founders building in security?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a sensitive topic, because I'm also in like groups with some security people, and I know that a lot of them get a lot of like shit from hackers and scammers.
Yeah.
That because it's like you're basically fighting, right? It's like the scammers and the security people. But I think generally with like Revoke.cash, I'm like offering the tooling, but I'm not sort of going out on the aggressive. And I think I have a lot of respect for the people that do that, and I know a lot of them that like actually sort of go scammer hunting to like try to take their websites down, try to figure out their scripts and like mess up their servers, or like some like counter hacking, those kinds of things. And I think that is when you're becoming like an even bigger target. Like I think everyone that works in security is like in some way has a target for like or is a target of like hackers, but especially if you are the ones that's like actively engaging with them and actively fighting them. So I do have a lot of respect for the people that do that, but I try to sort of stick to my lane in security, which is just providing users with the tooling that they can use.
Yeah, I totally agree. For example, yesterday, I think that was yesterday that SacXPT published this investigation about the Lazarus Group and how they laundered like $200 million, I think it was. Or you also see all the work from Samsung. But yeah, that's why they are anons too, right? So, Rosco, it has been a great interview and time for me. I learned a lot. It was very, very fun. I hope to see you at EthCC in Brussels. I think that we will do something with people that have been interviewed this podcast at EthCC, because most of us are going there. So thanks for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to add or tell to our listeners, apart from this thing of going and checking all these small features that you want to build? Because most of the people listening to this are people that are building in security, right?
Yeah. So definitely go check it out if you want to contribute. And I think also one sort of habit that I would like to instill into people is just like maybe have one specific time or day in the week to check Revoke.cash, because you're using crypto throughout the week, and I think you usually don't need to check like after, like, so there are some people that check Revoke after every like interaction they do just to be extra safe. But I think if you just have like maybe every Wednesday at like 10 o'clock, you know that you're on your computer and you just go to Revoke.cash and check, what have I been doing this past week? Did I create like new approvals? Do I need everything? So just kind of like have this routine of checking up on your token approvals.
I think that's very nice. We should do some kind of campaign like Revoke Wednesdays. I think that would be like a very, very good idea. In fact, I also tell people like everyone should have like one day a month. I know it's a lot, but to dedicate to security, right? To our OpSec, to check how we have everything. So yeah, I totally agree. So well, nice. Thank you very much, Rosco. Thank you very much to all of our listeners. I hope you enjoyed it as much as me. This has been the episode 8 of Blockchain Security Series with Rosco Callis, founder of Revoke.cash. So, thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Blockchain Security Series, the podcast where the future of Web3 security unfolds. Presented by pablito.eth.